I'd like to pull 5A for discussion, and then I have a couple questions on 5D.
Okay.
Did you say B as in Bernie?
No, D is a dog, thank you.
D as in dog?
Yes.
Okay.
So 5A is requested to be pulled for discussion, and then just questions on 5D. Do we have a second? Do we have a second? Okay, to pull. All right. So then, what's that? Keep me in line, Jen. What?
Anyone can pull an item from the consent.
Gotcha.
You don't need to vote on it.
Okay, thank you so much.
I'll make a motion that we accept the consent calendar as amended with the exclusion of item 5A and 5D.
I'll second.
Okay, there we are. That's the protocol. We have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Peters,
Yes.
Norvell,
Yes.
Morcell Hay,
Yes.
Albin Smith,
Yes.
Lee.
Yes. Okay, item 5A.
Yeah, 5A, I was asked by a member of the public, and then somebody came and spoke tonight, said they wanted this pulled. I think there's a few people here that want to talk about it and have some questions.
Any questions from the council first, or you want to go right to
No questions
the
from
public
me.
comments?
No, I'm
Paul, did you want
interested to hear what the public has to say.
Okay. Please come up if you'd like to address item 5A on the consent calendar. That's been pulled.
Paul Clark. Again, that's the resolution basically saying that a business license would not be required would not be required for 1 to 3 units, but 4 or more would. So I think it's directly related to the other section in the fees, which also incorporates commercial buildings also requiring a business license. So that would come up under the 7B or the 7A discussion. And I know there's several property owners here that own more than 4 residential units that might want to speak, but also commercial. So I don't know if you want to talk about them all at the same time.
What's the wish of the council? Do you want to discuss just that item, or combine it when we get to 7, or what's your pleasure?
I don't mind combining.
It'll be difficult to combine the actions, I think.
Right.
So, I don't know. I'm fine either way.
What I was going to suggest, if after your discussion on 7A, it might be the simplest way if the council is in agreement, or table it for a later date, but the preferred would be to declare that anything in a long-term rental period, 30 days or more, does not require, is not a business and doesn't require a business license or a business tax. That would be a simple solution. It hasn't been enforced. I've been here since 1976, and I've never known it to be enforced. Council must have years and years ago made that decision, because it's been laid dormant all these years until just recently.
Can I make
Certainly.
just a suggestion on procedure? Is that the direction that you folks are interested in, is actually having the requirement for a business license for any commercial or residential property be removed from the code? If the council's interested in that direction, I would actually suggest that we do it as a separate ordinance. You can discuss the current one that's on the consent calendar or not, but I would actually bring it back as a new, because we'd have to change the code, and so that would be the process. So I think if council's interested in taking any action on that, if you give staff that direction, then we'll bring it back and it'll actually go from there.
Okay.
I personally need to refrain from what Paul's talking about removing it completely, because I would benefit financially from that.
I think what got us to this, well, one of the reasons we're here with this on the agenda is because one business owner took the trouble to go and get a license. Well, I shouldn't say business owner. Somebody who had rentals got a business license, but no one else was getting them, and felt unfairly punished that we were sort of selective in requiring that. And so we don't have a code enforcement officer. I don't know what things were like in 1976. I suspect our building department didn't have a code enforcement officer then either. But so rather than change it the way you suggested, we never even got to that discussion. It was, this poor person is paying for something no one else is. Either we enforce it or we don't have it. Let's enforce it. I think that's the direction we sort of felt we were going. This is a new council. Maybe there's a different direction that we might want to go at this time. I don't know.
I don't know if I can respond to that or not.
No, well, I mean, that's a reality, I think, of
Well,
kind of the steps that brought us
the-
to where we are. We
and-
didn't even know, I didn't even know that business licenses were required for people who had rental units until she came and said, how come I'm paying it, no one else is?
Well, I personally have known about it for years, but I also knew that the city didn't enforce it. So it has never come up until just recently. And just for a point of order, I don't know, have this fact established, but I was led to believe that the person that got the license was told they had to have one by the city, and they went across and got one. So it
Councilmember,
wasn't-
excuse me, that was close. Councilmember Morcel, hey, you have a,
I would just like to say there isn't only one person who manages rentals or has rentals that has a business license. As soon as we bought the Golden West, the building itself is a separate business, and it has a business license because it has rentals. I mean, I too, I think we'll have to refrain probably from the discussion, but I just wanted to add that there are many more than just one. You know, that to me made sense.
well, since we
Right.
don't enforce it, I think I've said before that I think it should be removed altogether.
Well, we were talking just about residential when we
Right.
first started the discussion, and I've looked, and there are 15 businesses
Okay.
that have a license, so it's not just one.
No, but that was the
There's-
squeaky
there's-
wheel is what I meant.
There was
One came
there
and
was one,
complained.
and the way I remember it is that the former Mayor Turner had informed her that she should go get a business license. And that's how the whole thing started. But as far as commercial goes, I have not looked at the numbers on that, so.
Yeah, we need to do that.
What's the recommendation to come back with a new ordinance as the city manager recommends?
I think that's a good idea.
Yeah.
I think it warrants further discussion. We have
Certainly does.
new council members here.
Certainly does. Not back to committee, we don't need to do that. Finance or administration, do we?
So I think what the consensus is that we possibly don't want to require a business license for people with rentals.
That's
of
my
3 or less.
recommendation.
I'm hearing that. I don't know.
That's what I would support.
I'm not saying I support it or don't support it. I'm just going to say that I'd like to see the numbers first, and then we'll see, it's possible that that's the way to go.
I would recommend that as well.
Yeah, I think so.
Certainly.
The other thing I think we want to be a little bit cautious about is the business license requirement is essentially on anybody and everybody who does business in the city.
Right.
So the council just wants to probably be strategic. If you're going to exempt certain business types, that's fine. That's certainly your choice. But I think we want to think about why and how, because every group would probably want to be excluded from the business license type. So it just needs to be, there needs to be, I think, some good solid policy behind it. So I think bringing it back as a discussion item where we can bring back numbers and we can talk about how many people have those licenses and give some better solid data behind it might be helpful.
I agree. I think it would be negligible when we see the numbers, but we certainly need to see them and bring it back for further discussion. Is that enough direction? Do we need to make a motion to keep it off of the consent calendar or just bring it,
Well,
direction to bring it back?
It sounds like you're not going to take any action on that
Right.
item on the
We're not.
consent calendar, so we'll bring it back as a discussion item for the full council.
So,
Thank you.
So everybody understands the policy that we have in place is still in place.
If you don't take action on it, yes.
Correct. Thank you.
Okay.
I mean, I'm inclined to argue that we take action on today's consent item, and then this will be brought before us, and possibly we'll just strike the whole thing.
I agree, because if we don't know what's going to happen at the next meeting when we discuss this, and at minimum, passing this tonight reduces the obligation of who has to have a business license. Because I think just going in the other direction, we're assuming that in what direction we're going to go, and two of us sounds like are going to recuse. So I think Jessica's right, and we should pass this tonight. It doesn't change a whole lot, other than unless you have less than 4, you will not need a business license, which I think is going to be a positive effect for most people. Is that what you're talking about?
Yep.
Yeah. So I would, unless...
Did you want to make a motion? I guess we
We're
should.
going to vote on this.
Okay. Let's see if there's any more comment from the public on this item. Please come up.
Hi. I'm Phil Jago, the president of the Coastal Mendocino Association of Realtors, and we do have some concerns with the business license tax, of course. And we're worried that passing this ordinance might cause it to actually be, we know that it hasn't been enforced to a great degree, as far as we know, but we're worried that it will pass, that it will, the costs for the business license will be passed on to tenants. And so that's our concern, is that it will raise rents. And of course, we don't need any more of that. We have enough high rents in Fort Bragg as it is. But we do applaud the city of Fort Bragg for their for them exempting the business license tax for the rental of 3 or less dwelling units, but we still have concerns of what's going to happen if it's enforced for property owners with more than 3 units. And we have some letters from some concerned business owners that we'd like to present to the council.
Okay. The clerk will accept those for us. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Just a question. June, how much is a business license for someone, the typical business license we're talking about? Is it sliding scale depending on how many rental units you have? Or Victor, one of you?
The business license tax is 1/10 of 1%.
No. Okay, so that's what they're going to have to pay,
That's the tax. Yes.
Okay.
So if an apartment was $1,500 a month, that would be $1.50.
And the initial business license is currently $110, and it's actually dropping to $87.
And that's
was my
the fee.
question.
That's the fee portion.
Yeah, so there's 2 separate pieces to
Right.
it.
The fee portion for a business license is $87.
It will be if you adopt the changes in the
Right.
fees
And
tonight,
that's
yes.
per year.
Correct.
So that's what we're talking about, that would get passed on to a renter perhaps.
Plus a percentage of your
Right.
income from
Right.
rentals.
1/10 of 1%.
Right. Okay. Those are the kind of numbers that would be helpful to have, so thank you.
Please
Hi,
go ahead.
Jacob Patterson. I just wanted to endorse Bernie and Jessica's approach rather than tabling this. I think it's important, since it's just a second read, to get this in now and then revisit it. I would also encourage any members of the public concerned about this issue to also participate in the housing element discussion and the community workshop as a way to evaluate removing financial burdens to housing locally, because this ties into that, and it's an important project coming up that I know we're all very interested in, and it's important to connect the dots sometimes that aren't so obvious, but it's a big issue there for me. So I like this approach. I like removing the barriers and not having business license fees charged to people who don't need them. There may be other exemptions that you would like to. I would recommend, lawyers who don't have a permanent office being exempted too, but that's just my pitch.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would just like to say that the fact that the city didn't collect the tax for so long is a perfectly valid reason to drop the law. The presumption should always be that we give our people the maximum amount of freedom and take from them the least amount of resources. That's the basic premise of our operations in America. And if we are not collecting the tax, and we haven't collected it for a long time, Tabitha, and Victor, as these, professional guys, running the show, want to keep all their quivers in the arrow, all their arrows in the quiver. They want to be able to tax whenever it's feasibly possible, if that is appropriate. And I understand that as a practical matter. But the city council is supposed to answer to a higher standard. The city council should never forget that they're representing the people of the city, not the administrative apparatus that works for them. And if the city has not collected a tax for a long period of time, I think Will, before they shot at him on his idea, was on the right track. This ought to be, it's not that I disagree with what's up for vote. Getting rid of part of it is better than getting rid of none of it. But to me, the overriding principle and the most important principle is that we haven't been collecting the tax, at least for most people. Therefore, the presumption should be that we're not going to collect the tax, not just hold on to, in this sort of avaricious way to every option that we have for maybe getting a nickel out of the people. It answers a higher principle, and it makes a case for the responsibility of the city council to the people as their principal concern. So I think you should definitely get rid of all the taxes on this.
Thank you. Any other comment from the public? Well, back to council for recommendation or action.
I'll make a motion that we approve 5A on the consent calendar.
A second?
We have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Peters,
Yes.
Norvell,
Yes.
Morsohe,
Yes.
Albin Smith,
Yes.
Lee.
Yes.
We didn't get a chance for discussion on the motion, but I just wanted to say that we tasked both the city manager and Victor in our budget workshop with trying to find ways. Is there any revenue we're missing? Rather than create new revenues, anything we're missing, and this is one of the things that came out of the various discussions we've had as a potential source of revenue that we're missing. So along with the other responsibility and duties we have to the public is a fiscal responsibility. We're also on a tight budget here at the city, and we're a family budget, and we don't want to run up our credit cards or anything like that. So we're not just following what the administration is saying because they're worried about the dollars. We're worried about your dollars too and how your dollars are getting spent. So that's why we're trying to see if there's possibly a little pool of revenue here that we missed. That's also part of this equation that we didn't really get to in our discussion. So on behalf of staff, I think that should be said. We tasked you to try and be creative, and you did come back with a possible pool of money we've been missing. So thank you for that, but we'll maybe try and find dollars somewhere else, it looks like.
I will also add that another priority we asked of the city administration was to remove barriers to housing and development of housing, and so that's the other part. We don't want to miss any revenue, but we also want to remove as many barriers as possible. It's one of our number one goals is improved housing stock here in Fort Bragg. So we're trying to juggle all of those things, I think, at the same time. Thank you.